Hey, good day, everyone. And we are in our grassroots, low budget holiday episode of our media mashup with coaches or coach of College Volleyball Weekly, episode 289. And that means knocking on the door in the new year is a 2026 NCAA men's volleyball season, which I know that two guys on the screen are fired up to jump into, as well as our three missing normal panelists, Dan Friend, Theo Edwards, and Brad Rostratter. They wanted to be here, I'm sure, but they've got family commitments and other stuff happening. But on screen, Jay Hosack from the Northeast. That's right, Nova, representing Nova area, George Mason University, and even further Northeast, none other than, gosh, he's kind of like the Kim Kardashian of men's volleyball. That's Joe McCurdy, putting out some great content and shedding light on volleyball throughout the nation. Gentlemen, hope you had a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Great to have you on board today.
First of all, I take a little offense to me being considered low budget. I charge an awful lot of money for my appearances here. If you can tell, I'm partaking in some of the cheap water that you sent me. But I can't wait to get this year started. We're all excited. I know everybody across the country is ready to go. So good to be here.
I don't know what made me the Kim Kardashian of sports media, of sports volleyball media, but I'll take that title as much as I can as well. Glad to be here and excited for the season to start.
Well, maybe it'll be the Charlemagne of men's volleyball. How about that?
I'll take the Timothy Chalamet of men's volleyball.
All right. Well, with that, I wanted to get into the good stuff of the year, but unfortunately, we started this 2026 season on a sad note in that someone who's been very important to the volleyball community passed on Christmas morning. And I'm referring to Glen Lietzke of Austin Juniors Volleyball. And, he's done a lot for the game. You could look up the release on USA Volleyball, First Point, as well as through Austin Juniors and the Boys Southwest Classic in Austin, Texas, being that he's been a part of that. And you wouldn't know that unless you actually knew him. I don't mean that in a very bad way. It's just he's the kind of guy that operated behind the scenes. But rather than me talk about him, his wife, Kathy, wrote something very sweet on her Facebook post. And I wanted to capture that because I want to do nothing but honor, respect, and remember Glenn. So I'm going to read her post. So bear with me. It says, many of you already know that Glenn passed away early Christmas morning after a 4+ year, very private and courageous journey with acute myeloid leukemia. It's clear from social media posts and responses that I've seen and the text messages and calls I've received in the last few days that Glenn had an impact on many in the volleyball community. There are not enough words to adequately express what he meant to me. He was a wonderful father, an amazing partner in life and business, and an example of striving for excellence while living in the moment. He was a gentle giant. He could fill a room with his presence and yet would tear up when talking about things dear to him. He could implore someone to do things better and then wrap them in a big teddy bear hug. He could make people laugh. He was quick-witted and he had a sarcastic, dry sense of humor. Goodness, he could make me laugh. And above all, he was generous and selfless. Of all the things Glenn accomplished, he is most proud of Nathan and Lauren and the human beings they become. They are his best legacy. I'm immensely grateful for the 25 wonderful years we had together and the life we built together. We were a great team, and I will miss him immensely. I cannot imagine the volleyball world without him in it, yet I know he surrounded himself with really, really good people, and that this vast community that surrounds us will continue to embrace our family and will continue his legacy. So, with that, he'll be having a memorial service on Friday, January 2nd, 10:30 a.m. at St. Andrew's Episcopal Church. And obviously, it's open to the public, but I just wanted to share and give you guys an opportunity to share your thoughts as well. But I met Glenn 4 years ago, did not realize who he was, and his wife, Kathy, who is a lovely, lovely person. Um, Nathan played at Stanford. He was a setter and a pretty decent, good sized setter with great hands. But after one of the matches, they both came down and said, "We would love you to come out to the First Point Collegiate Challenge and MC host." So it's from that relationship that I got to know who they were. And I will just say that in the short time that I have experienced Kathy and Glenn and Nathan and Lauren, he is probably one of the most generous, um, selfless individuals I have seen who's poured 100, 2,000% into the growth of particularly volleyball, but he had a special passion for men's and boys' growth. He was the workhorse behind the scenes. But in one of the posts I put, it was so fitting because he has impacted so many people. As much as he wanted it to be a secret, he impacted so many people that it could not be a secret. You have names like Molly McCage of the USA Women's National Team, of Austin Love and Texas middle blocker standout, and other names like Kirsty Jackson and so many others that he has affected, men's volleyball players, that you couldn't help but hear his name in conversations because he and Kathy, and they were an incredible team together for the growth of the game. And obviously, First Point, they were huge contributors, not only financial, but also just all they've offered from their skills and experience in the game because he was a head coach in a few places and obviously ran Austin Juniors. So he's going to be dearly missed. And, with First Point, the First Point Collegiate Challenge moving to the Phoenix area this year, first time ever due to some logistical things in Austin this year. The event will still be going on, but it's going to be the largest ever that they've had. So I wanted to keep the focus on Glenn, but obviously we were talking before jumping online that Jay and Joe, we've all had such a minimal amount of time with such a great person. But I wanted to share your thoughts on Glenn's recent passing. So let's go and start with you, Jay.
Well, I first of all, my heartfelt condolences to the family. I didn't know Glenn personally, but I have had some phone calls with him and the family over the years, and you can just tell the passion that was behind everything they were saying. They were so fired up and so energetic about trying to just grow the men's game to a level that could be respected across the country instead of where it was. They were never satisfied. And you're right, Glenn was behind the scenes kind of guy. He wasn't the guy that necessarily was in front of the camera with the lights on and trying to fire up a crowd and trying to get all these people to get on board with what he's doing. He was the guy behind the scenes that was putting together the people that were doing those things. And you know, when you mention Texas volleyball, the Lietzke family comes to mind immediately. And I know that the son Nathan played at Stanford and he was a good player there. And they tried to get us to come out to Texas years ago when they were first building that thing when it was still in its infancy, and unfortunately we could never make it. But just the fact that they would reach out to anyone that they felt could be a part of this and wanted to be a part of it, and they just built it to be something that, I mean, look at what it's doing now. It's going to be the biggest attended event, and it's not even going to be in Texas. That's the sad part. They're the fruits of their labor, and this year especially, not being able to have it in their backyard is a little bit of a bummer, I'm sure. But it'll continue to grow. It'll continue to get better. And I wish nothing but the best for the Lietzke family, and I hope they're okay.
Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I echo that sentiment. I mean, I like you, Rob. I not 4 years ago, but 1 year ago, I met the Litzkes at the First Point Collegiate Challenge, and you could just feel the energy that Glenn had around him. I didn't know who he was until I was introduced to him by you, Rob. But to have just yet another, it's been a really sad off season for the sport of volleyball, just losing Glenn and then losing Steve Vale as well on the broadcasting side. It's been some pretty big behemoths in our sport on both the broadcasting side and behind the scenes to see leave our game. But the energy that he put in, I feel like it's had enough impact on those around him that we can continue the work that he's done for so many years. So
Yeah. Well, with that, our hearts, prayers, condolences, and sympathies go to the entire Lietzke family. Um, you know, we're- Obviously they're going to be taking some time off, but we know that the Southwest Boys Classic, as well as First Point Collegiate Challenge, will still be going on. So please, please, listeners, viewers, still get the word out. We're going to be there, and we want to do great honor and to Glenn in his legacy with this event, because as we all know. The game is growing, and he had a very, very passionate love for the game. and he basically put his money where his mouth is. And he not only did that, he went ahead and threw down his body into all that because he was the work. And if you want to model yourselves after someone who's committed and passionate, Glenn is the man. Well, I have to say Glenn and Kathy because she was equally working as hard, supporting and doing all the other stuff that Glenn was doing. So we definitely look forward to seeing Kathy here in the hopefully nearer future, but we know that she's going to be taking time and the rest of the staff that's going to be overseeing this legacy that Glenn has created. So, um, and Joe, you actually brought something else that I wanted to mention, and it was the passing of the famous BYU commentator, and it was such a sad day discovering that as well. Because when I saw the social media post, I wanted to see if you could go and just share a little bit on your connection with the program and Steve's legacy as one of. Well, personally, he's one of the most entertaining commentators. Good for so many laughs.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like my story is similar to a lot of people that are currently young in the sport of volleyball. I grew up watching Steve and Jerem on those BYU TV broadcasts with my dad. BYU was my team growing up, and those were our favorite broadcasts. We would consistently say, "Man, these are the two best broadcasters in really any sport." And if they could be on contract for the national championship for just more games other than BYU, it would help in the growth of the men's game. And I was able to meet him 2 years ago when my dad and I went to our first ever BYU game together. My first ever BYU, my first ever volleyball game, my first ever Division I volleyball game. And I remember there was a running joke on their broadcast is, they would always have Sour Patch Kids. Sour Patch Kids were their favorite candy, and whenever they had Sour Patch Kids, it always ended up in a BYU win. So my dad and I brought a pack of Sour Patch Kids on the first game, and that was the game against UCLA back in I think 24, where they ended up defeating UCLA in five that game, and I was able to meet them again this past season when BYU played Hawaii. Just brought them another pack of Sour Patch Kids each, and he was a major inspiration on me wanting to continue in the sport of volleyball, continue to be a broadcaster, a media personality. So yeah, he was one of, if not the most influential broadcasters that I've ever watched. So.
All right, Jay, you've had multiple years, as have I, watching that career grow with Jerem and good times.
Yeah, again, thoughts and heartfelt prayers to the family. It just is such a bummer. If you get a chance to go to a BYU game at Smith Fieldhouse, it's a unique experience. It's very well attended. It's a professional environment, and they do a fantastic job. But if you can't get there for whatever reason, I mean, it's not exactly in everybody's backyard. You get a chance to watch BYU volleyball on TV. It's BYU TV, but the quality was unbelievably good. I mean, the crispness of the screen itself, and having Jerem and Steve there giving the play-by-play. And granted, they're BYU homers, but you're allowed to be, right. That's okay. They were funny, and they added characters to the game, and they added some flavor. And what I always appreciate about them is they would take tweets or text messages live during matches, and they would give shout outs to people across that would reach out to them and send them a note during a game or send them a picture of what they're doing while they're watching the game. And you got to love that kind of stuff because, listen, at the base value, we're in a relationship business, right? And they treated everybody, whether you were a fan that they knew about or nobody that they've ever heard of before, they treated you with respect, and they gave you a piece of that little moment in history. And we are going to miss people like that because, listen, we're not spring chickens anymore, right? We're getting older, and people move on, and
Except for
people
Joe.
change, except for Joe. And people change directions, and we're going to miss these people, and we're going to miss Steve. We're going to miss his voice, and I know Jerem is going to hopefully find somebody to step into those big shoes and do a great job, and I'm sure you will. But it's another bummer of this industry that unfortunately is just part of nature. It's part of life. So Yeah, I liked watching them. They were good together.
Yeah. Well, with that, definitely as Jay has Ray said, our hearts, prayers, and condolences to the Vale family and the BYU family because, I had the opportunity to do the MPSF preview, and I think I caught head coach Sean Olmsted off guard in that I wanted to recognize Steve and his passing because he's to me, I think BYU men's volleyball, and you can't think of that team without Steve and Jerem. So definitely family loss, and they'll be missed sorely. So with that, let's jump into our main part of our episode. And this first section, I needed to add another one on there. It's called Deaths, Departures, and Resurrections. So yeah, interesting. I thought that one through literally while we were talking just now. But first, death of a program. We said goodbye to Grand Canyon University at the end of the 2025 season. Um, I know we can open up a hornet's nest in our discussion, but if we can just maybe give a summary statement of the Grand Canyon departure. And I feel like Jay's ready to go. Jay's always ready to go. We could do an episode on this alone. We did do an episode on this alone, but thoughts on the departure of Grand Canyon?
Well, unfortunately, I don't think it's the last. The new NCAA landscape. We've talked about this ad nauseum for however long in the last number of months. Not only amongst ourselves, but even when we were doing the last few episodes of last season. The problem is that the new landscape of the NCAA with revenue sharing and everybody trying to grab as many dollars as possible. Not only have you seen Grand Canyon drop their program, but you see St. Francis dropping to Division 3 because they don't want to try to fight with the Joneses anymore. And you see programs like Morehouse that are taking a quote unquote pause, but we all know that pause means they're saying the right things. But unfortunately, I don't know if that program's going to survive. I'm not saying they aren't for sure. I don't know, but I think you're going to see more of this. And then think about in the future when Division 2 breaks off and has their own championship. Congratulations, that's awesome. But when some of those programs started, when First Point, first started really exploding, a lot of their growth was at the D3 and D2 levels. And part of the allure, if you will, for D2s to join on board is that they got to say that they were playing with the big boys. Well, when the D2 has their own championship, I'm not sure how they're going to structure the weight of playing Division 2 and Division 1 opponents, but I can't imagine it's going to be the same weight. And if you're a Division 1 team looking for RPI and strength of schedule and the whole 9 yards, playing Division 2, although a great team maybe, might not be as worthy to a program of spending money rather than playing another Division 1 team, even if it's not as strong caliber wise. Again, I don't know how that's going to work out, but now you're going to see these Division 2 ADs going, well, we paid all this money because we wanted to say we were playing with USC and UCLA and Hawaii and all these teams, which a fair amount of teams did get a chance to. If that doesn't happen in the future, I'm hopeful that ADs won't just decide, well, that's not worth it anymore and get rid of more programs. That's my hope. But all this is we're still in brand new territory that nobody's ever been in before. And we don't know what it's going to look like on the other side. But I'm hopeful is, I guess, the best word I can use right now to describe it.
Yeah. Joe.
Yeah, I echo everything that was just said. I mean, when I was on my all my MIVA Media Day calls, a lot of our conversations were about how much youth the youth level has grown and how much talent there is at the youth level. And now that there are just fewer opportunities to go to that next level, how viable it is to get into this sport at a young age, right? So we're seeing men's volleyball, especially in high school, be one of the biggest sports in the country. And seeing programs, Division 1 programs like Grand Canyon, just completely leave, just I mean, taking away that opportunity for these kids to continue their careers in this sport is it's really really unfortunate. And Morehouse, St. Francis, it's really disheartening. But you also see programs popping up. Really excited to see what Northern Kentucky does this year. Really excited to see what Jessup and UC Merced are able to do in the MPSF. So hopefully with these teams leaving, we can try and fight back a little bit, right? Like Jay said, we're in a really uncertain time, so we're really not sure what the future holds. But with First Point fighting back with our, and encouraged participation in watching these teams and engaging with these teams, hopefully we can see a little bit of a turn in that. But
And let's not forget UOP being brought back, which is awesome in its own right.
That's
And
my resurrection piece. You just stole my resurrection
so
piece.
it's called a segue, Rob. I don't know. I'm low rent, so maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Segue, what's a segue? But no,
Yeah.
the reality, the segue into that is now you see a program that historically has always been a competitive program. I don't know how many MPSF championships they won. I know that it's been few, but they were in a juggernaut of a conference for a long time. But a lot of great players came out of there. I mean, look at Chris Tamas. Chris is, the head coach of Illinois, went on to the national team, and you got other great guys that have come out of there that have done great things on their own right. You look at Kevin Pratt, you look at Daryl Dillamore, you look at Sam Croson, you look at all these guys that played for a guy named Joe Wortman, who, if you know him, is one of the sweetest gentlemen you've ever met. Cared so much about that program, and to see it now come back from the dead and be able to create another opportunity where one was taken away. It'd be really neat to see that program just hit the ground running at full speed. I mean, if you ever have been to the campus is gorgeous. The facility is fantastic. Spanish facility is fantastic. Stockton maybe a little something left to be desired in terms of locale, but who cares? I mean, you're living on campus, you're having a great time, you're around people that are trying to do the similar thing and get better at the sport and take it to the next level. And so I'm really excited to see what UOP is going to do.
Well, it is segued into the resurrection. So, Joe, thoughts on Pacific being resurrected?
yeah, I mean, the blood, sweat, and tears that went into that with the Hula Hands, I mean, all credit to them. They really, really did their part to bring that program back. And like Jay said, really excited to see, all these programs hit the ground running because, would love to avoid, D2 breaking off just with seeing these teams compete in the MPSF, in the MIVA. So, yeah, really, really excited to see what Pacific does. And while I may not know much about their history, I'm excited to see what they do as a program coming up.
Their players, their alumni are very, very tight. And they all really cared about their program. They cared about their coaches, and they really want that program to get back to prominent status. You mentioned the Houlihan's. I want to give Ariel and Matt a little kudos here. You guys are, you're leading the charge in your own right on the West Coast with your podcasts, and I watch them regularly and love what you guys do. And the fact that you're cutting edge, with the fact that you take risks and say some things that maybe most people won't want to say because we're all fearful of maybe our jobs. But I really appreciate listening to what you guys say, because you're saying the right things and you're pushing the envelope where it needs to be done. And I know that UOP hired an ex-men's player from back in the day who was just recently in Laverne, Hendershot, who is now taking his chances up at the Division I level. I've heard Mac's name in the loop for maybe a head coach position at UOP for the men's side. I've heard Sam Croson's name in the loop a little bit. I don't know who they're going to hire, but man, would it be cool to get another alumni to come back to take that program to the next level. And so I wanted to give the Hula Hands a little love. Keep doing what you're doing and keep pushing the boundaries.
Yeah. Well, personal story, the last day of Pacific's very last match, at the end of it was Pacific happened to be playing UC Irvine at the Brent Event Center in 2015, I believe it was.
Yep.
And, the Brent Event Center rented out their Cole room for a reception for kind of like the farewell to the Pacific program. And I happened to be staying there just working. And, by the time I finished working, the event had finished. And it was one of the most saddening things to see. But Joe walking out of the parking lot by himself with no one else there. I
Yeah.
remember thinking, man, he put his heart, soul, blood, sweat, and tears into this program for them to cut it. Um, so, to see this program come back about is wonderful news. And he had phenomenal athletes that represented that program well. In fact, Irvine benefited from two of them. Thomas Hodges, who's now in the top 20 in the world in beach volleyball, and Marty Ross, who played for Irvine, was a part of some tourney runs for the Anteaters, but also has become a respectful coach in his own. I believe he's actually back up north, if I'm correct, with one of the MPSF teams as an assistant.
Uh, and and think about Dan Fisher, who is now at Pitt and taking that program to new heights. He is an alumni of that program, and I think he was coaching there as well for a little bit when he graduated. He transferred from Northridge, and so there's just a lot of great players that came out of that program that maybe at the time you're not recognizing them, but they went on to do bigger and better things. And I suffice to say, knowing Joe, he's not my best friend, but I know Joe well enough. I bet you that moment of him walking out by himself was him wanting to, so people wouldn't see just how it affected him, and he probably wouldn't want to be the harbinger of that moment, right? He just wanted to go off into the sunset by himself and just go, look, I did everything I could, and
Hmm.
his guys care about him a lot.
Yeah. Well, with that, we had mentioned departures. Jay, you mentioned Morehouse, which is news to me when I spoke to you last night. So they're on pause, whatever that means. And
Yeah.
then St. Francis moves over to D3. But with that, we have new teams and new places to discuss. And Joe mentioned a few of them. And then we're going to culminate into the expansion of the NCAA tournament to 12 teams, which is huge news. But the other teams that are now added to the mix, UC Merced and Jessup into the MPSF, Northern Kentucky University into the MIVA, Manhattan College, and University of Maryland Eastern Shore, both associate members added to the NEC. So have at it, boys. Start feeding. What do you want to say about everything that's happened beyond the NCAA tournament expansion?
Well, listen, as a fellow UC grad, also known as the Ivy League of the West Coast, thank you very much. I'm super stoked to see UC Merced come into the mix. That's awesome. Jessup is obviously a program. I think they're in the Redlands area. They're way up there in NorCal.
Yes.
And the MPSF may not look like what the old fogies myself remember the MPSF looking like back in the day. But listen, it's expansion, and who knows what's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years, because obviously those are D2 programs, and if D2 has their own championship, there might not be a need for them to be in the MPSF, and if that happens and they all have to pull out, the MPSF is in trouble. And so I hope everything's okay. But regardless of that, super excited that they're getting a chance to get up and running. You also mentioned University of Maryland Eastern Shore, Dr. Anita Brockman running that program. One of my former alumni is her assistant. We got a chance to scrimmage them this fall. They're good. They're fun to watch. They're scrappy. They're a tight-knit group of guys. They work their butts off, and Anita's doing just a fantastic job. So seeing them and Manhattan, who we're going to see this year coming down to our gym for the first time, joining the NEC, which obviously lost St. Francis going to Division III after this year. But yeah, there's some movement, right? There's growth. I mean, I know we're talking about losing some programs, but we're gaining some programs too. So just super excited for this year. And in Northern Kentucky, Tim Palalonis is a good coach, and he's got some good players that, a lot of us, when all this 18-man roster thing was coming down, we all had a number of guys on our roster potentials, right? Our walk-ons, so to speak, that we had to make phone calls to and say, hey, we can't make it happen here. We've already got commitments. And Tim scooped those kids up. He's got some nice kids on that roster. They're going to be good. And I'm excited to see what he does.
Yep. Joe?
Yeah, I could not be more excited, especially with the teams that I'm going to be able to see on the East Coast, UMES, Manhattan, and Northern Kentucky. Really, really excited because all of these programs that are leaving, all of these programs with the roster limits, like Jay said, I mean, you're getting these teams with players that want the opportunity, that have the talent. Because I look at teams like UCLA, I look at teams like Hawaii, and they hoard the talent. You've got so much talent, and they're on the B team, and they'll never see the floor. And now you'll hopefully you'll see them transfer out, go to these new programs, and truly like help the teams grow and help the competition grow. So it's not just the top two teams every year in the MIVA, in the EIVA, in the NEC that continuously just overturn. I mean, you look at the LMU transfers that are flooding the MIVA right now. I'm really, really excited to see what they do. Really just excited to see them all hit the floor, because we're in this kind of unknown to where at what point are they going to be able to compete. Hopefully we'll be able to see them compete right away. But I'm just excited to have all these new programs and going into a national championship where it's not so perfect, right? You don't have to have a perfect season to make it to that end goal. You can play with a little bit more freedom. You can, schedule a little bit more, a good word for it. I don't really have one at the moment, but you're able to make it through a season more consciously, and I'm sure Jay, you've got a better perspective on it than I do as as an actual head coach of a program. But I'm really looking forward to a new landscape, a lot of new teams competing, and to see what talent we really have.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, so I'm going to do a shameless self-promotion. For that, I apologize, but I had the opportunity to host the MPSF preview in which I got to speak to the head coaches, first year coaches at UC Merced and Jessup, and Chris Carter, sorry, Kyle Steele, Chris Wallace, and they did a great job of hiring those programs. Young, energetic coaches they look like they're some of the most charismatic and influential people for these young guys who are excited to play the game. And, from the description of like UC Merced, they like their volleyball in that central agricultural valley of California, but they have great community support. And in Northern California, Kyle has got a solid pool to choose from with all those clubs just around him alone. So I wouldn't sleep on these teams by any means. So it's just an exciting time to have these new teams coming about. With that, I want to jump into the newest conference, and we actually talked a little bit about before coming on, and the GLVC. Jay and I talking last night and prepping. I'm like, wait, that's an official thing. Just a few months ago, it just was a discussion. But Jay gets a memo with all the coaches. Hey, GLVC voting. I'm like, oh. So please do. That's going to be Jamestown coming over from NAIA, Maryville, Missouri S&T, Rockhurst, Roosevelt, Southwest Baptist University coming in from D3. And if Thomas More somehow gets life support, they'll be in there as well. So, Jay, what do you know?
Well, unfortunately, not as much as Dan Friend would know. He is the eyes and ears, if you will, of how all that's breaking apart. First of all, I do not claim to know anything other than what I see. I've had these conversations for years, but it's all been so hush hush. Nobody seems to have the right answer except Dan. Dan always has the right answer. But I don't know if the GLVC is an actual conference this year. All I remember seeing is when I'm on the poll committee again this year, and when we get the initial reports from each school, obviously they go by conference, and so you scroll through the large document, and it used to be a relatively short document to scroll through. Now it's getting longer and longer. So when you scroll through, you see MPSF, MIVA, EIVA, you get through all that stuff. And then you saw a GLVC conference. And so I looked at it and I thought, well, I don't remember that being an actual recognized conference yet for men's volleyball. I thought it was going to be another year or two. However, the fact that they're mentioning it means that the wheels must be in motion. And so that's all I'm going to comment now for that. I just don't know. And strangely enough, I think a couple things might come out of this. One, guess the names that you don't see on that list. McKendree and Lewis. Those are your two main programs in the MIVA that have said they don't want to go to the GLVC, yet their schools are in that GLVC conference. That's a little bit of a fight there. And I know Dan has talked a little bit about it over the years, and so I'll let him expand upon that. Whether or not they're joining or not, I don't know. But you also look at programs like Charleston. You look at programs like Lincoln Memorial. You look at programs like maybe some of the other ones that are in the old Conference Carolinas that are no longer in it. Like you see some potential for those teams to shift into something maybe like the GLVC, because when D2 does have their championship, how are you going to justify being in a conference that you're not going to get an AQ from, right? So if you're Charleston, and I'm only going to use this as an example because I know it firsthand. If you are Charleston and you are a D2 program in a D1 conference and you are now fighting for an AQ to get into the D2 championships, if you're in a D1 conference, you may get to say, yeah, we play Princeton, we play Penn State, we play George Mason. Great. But you don't get a chance to get an AQ into the championships that you're really fighting for, because you're not going to be able to play in the D1 championships. At that moment, teams like that are going to have to find a home. And when they look around in that geographical area right now, GLVC is the game, right? And so does that all of a sudden become a pull? The ECC has Deauville and a couple others up there. Damon, those are D2 schools that possibly could use maybe some D2 movement over from our side of the country. So we're not done seeing the shift yet. I think in the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to see a couple more teams, a handful of teams more, start to push away and go into places that make more sense for them, where they're able to fight with like-minded, people, rather than staying in a conference just to say they're in a D1 conference, but not have a chance to really play for an AQ.
Yeah. Joe, what do you have to add?
I don't have much to add. I know I've had conversations with Coach Nikki Sandlin about this when I was there in Lebanon last season, about the potential shift to the GLVC and how they were fighting that. I know I had a conversation with Coach Peluso from Queens, about how they may be better suited for a place in the EIVA, where just with where they're located. So conference realignment, we see it in football. We're not really seeing it in volleyball, but which is with all the programs being added, you're just like, here, you go to the MPSF, you go to the you go to the MIVA, with no real thought. Just those are the programs that if you're really gonna commit to being a program in men's volleyball, that's where you need to go. So to see these conferences come up, to see the NEC, they were 2 years, 3 years along from actually being a conference, and now you'll see Damon, you'll see you'll see Damon and those teams really be successful. So hopefully a little conference realignment down the road wouldn't be too bad.
Yeah. Well, you look at the current state of Division I, II volleyball programs, and had to do some countdown to make sure it was right. But 73 total programs between D1, 2, 29 of them are D1, 44 D2. So with that, you also have to consider the participation rate of boys volleyball in the last 10 years, 76%, just short of 77. It's growing, and as Winnie had mentioned, programs are going to need to accommodate these guys, because you're going to have some really good talent. Little side note, as we're on our Christmas break, my family is here on the East Coast, down the street from Queen's University. I go to a Christmas Eve party, and we were at a friend of a friend's house, and someone goes, "Are you Rob on the mic?" I'm like, yes. How are you supposed to respond to that? Well, he actually just moved here from the St. Louis area. Buddies play for Missouri A&T. He's like, gosh, we just love watching what you guys are doing and how the game is growing. And now he's here in the North Carolina area, had no idea about Queen's University men's program. So we need to get that exposure out there. So I'm trying to say, hey, you're at NC State. Hey, jump on board, support the club program, go to other teams, go to the beach. And when you're at home, support your Queens program. So, I mean, it's out there. The interest is definitely out there.
They need it right now, because I was reading they've got some sort of financial partnership with Elon University right now, where they can't really function completely, and it was something that I wasn't able to talk to Roger about, but Queens definitely needs as much support as they can get right now.
And yeah. Jay has a personal connection to the Queen's University program as well. Would you like to go into that?
Yeah, Roger coached for me for a couple of years, and I encouraged him to take that job. And I think when he went through the process, I don't think the Elon connection was made notice to him until after he had accepted it. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it's still up in the air of what they're going to do, and is Queens going to continue to operate at the level that they are now and keep both universities, kind of at this level? Well, Elon's a well-respected name in the athletic community, especially with their basketball team. And is this an opportunity for them to maybe take some of that money from the Queens University coffers, if you will, and shift it over to Elon, and then maybe shift, Queens to another level. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to leave it. I don't know if they're going to drop. I don't know if they're going to lower. I don't know what they're doing. And Roger doesn't seem to have an answer either. I know, so it's business as usual. But yeah, they can use support because it's a program that had some decent success there. They're not a bad program. They just need a little support and they need some stability. And so hopefully they get that in the coming years and they can become a big name team again.
Yeah. Well, more to come, I'm sure. We'll as the season gets going. But I want to move into our next segment. Unfortunately, with the start of the 20, well, actually, not even before the start of the 2026 season, we had some big retirements announced, which one of them was one of the hugest shocks to me because, in my eyes, he's still one of the youngest coaches out there. And that's Long Beach State coach Alan Knipe, who announced his retirement after 20 years at the beach, which I don't want to put my age out there, but I actually had an opportunity to play against Al. And I'm like, wait a second. I mean, I get to hang him up too. I'm right there. But I was actually at his office the day after the announcement because we filmed the Big West preview there. So I had a pretty good discussion with him. But I wanted to get your guys' response to Alan Knipe's retirement. So we'll start with you, Joe.
Yeah, no, so I got to spend like a week with Coach Knipe in Canada this past summer, and it was probably one of the most eye-opening experiences I could have ever asked for, just to learn so much about who he is as a person, who he is as a coach, what he's gone through to get to where he is. And now with his Champions Unlimited program, I think he's in a perfect position to continue to help this sport. I mean, yes, it's sad to see him leave Long Beach. The impact he had on that program, the legacy that he has over there, it's going to be surely missed. But he's going to continue to make waves just in the growth of the youth side. I was able to see him coach and lead so many different youth camps, and the messages that he was bringing to these young athletes. It was just so enlightening to see what he can continue to bring to this game under this Champions Unlimited umbrella without, being a part of Long Beach State, because obviously there's some borderlines and some yellow tape that he would have had to cross continuing with Long Beach as he grows this Champions Unlimited program. But I don't see Long Beach State having any sort of drop off. Nick McCray is probably one of the best assistant coaches in the country. Will probably end up being a top 5 head coach. 5 years down the line, maybe even in his first couple of years at the helm. But really excited to see what Coach Knipe does with Champions Unlimited, and just happy to be able to have seen just an inkling of that this past summer.
All right, Jay, you've had a long history with Alan too. I mean, being a Southern California kid and hanging out here, let's see what you got for Al.
Well, first of all, I just give Alan congrats on a fantastic career. The fact that you're getting out now, I think there's a lot of coaches that are a little jealous because the turmoil hasn't even really started to begin yet, and you're saying, "Hey, I'm going out on a high note." But Alan has done so much of that program. Give him a little love here, fellow junior college, Southern California junior college alum. He played at Orange Coast. I played at Pasadena City College back in the day. A lot of us came out of that system at some point, and it was a great place to start. But I think the goal for any head coach when you get either your first job or the job that you want to be at for a while, that one of the number one things that you always say to yourself and to everybody around you is, I want to leave this place better than when I got here. And there's a lot of people, and that varies, right? It can be just a couple of things, could be a ton of things. It just depends on the resources and who was there before you and what was available. I think it's safe to say Alan left it in a little bit better situation than when he got it, just a little bit. I echo what Joe says about Nick. Nick's a great young coach. He's going to do fantastic things. I think the people out in the ethos, if you will, are saying, how is it going to be? Is it going to be different? Is it going to be the same? It's going to be Nick. It's going to be his program, and he can do with it what he wants. And I'm pretty sure he's not going to change, he's not going to completely change the whole thing and upheave it from ground up. I think he's going to do a lot of the same things, but he's going to have his own flair. And I'm excited to see what he does. But Alan, the way he built that program, the way he positioned that program over the years, especially with AD changes that were maybe not so favorable to the men's volleyball program over the years, and how he just dug his heels in and said, nope, we're going to do it this way. And, he kept pivoting and kept repositioning himself to be in a better spot. That's what good coaches do, right? You can't always just stay the same. And every time you hit a brick wall, go, well, I guess I'm done. He hit the brick wall, spun, pivoted another direction, and kept taking it forward. And that's just a testament to his vision, to the people around him and his staff. I mean, his assistant coaches over the years are some of the biggest and best names in the game. And that program has a lot to be proud of. The fans love dearly that program. And Long Beach itself has a team that they can support and follow and root for, with every year of having a chance for a national championship. And that's all you can ask for. So kudos to Alan. Kudos to all the hard work he's done, and just, could not be more proud of that. And now he gets to enjoy the fruits of his labor at an age where maybe it's a little bit more conducive to his happiness, rather than waiting so long like the rest of us schmoes.
Yeah, well, he's an empty nester with his boys now out of the house. He and Jennifer can enjoy their marriage.
What better time, right? Now you don't have to worry about the kids. You can go out and play golf. You can go surf. You can go do whatever you want. I mean, that's a life. So, yeah, he's living it.
Well, yeah. Well, also you bring in some of the external factors. Long Beach is hosting the 2028 Beach Olympics, and let's be real, up 22-57. You're at Honda Center for men's volleyball, so you know that Long Beach is going to be a huge location for volleyball. Period.
Yeah,
So
I hope there's a way to get Alan involved, maybe in kind of a board of directors type thing. Without getting into too much of the weeds, there's been some discussion amongst the men's coaches about how we can start to raise our voices a little bit, and especially to the powers that be above us and oversee us, to be able to get some things moving in a direction that might be a little bit more conducive to our success. And I've always said, since I've been around coaching, we are now missing some pretty loud voices. We miss Arnie Ball. We miss Al Skates. We miss Carl McGowan. We miss Pete Hansen, because those guys really stood up and banged the drum for men's volleyball when really nobody really was. And now we're losing another one. Alan is a big, big voice, and he was a big proponent for us. And so, gosh, I sure hope there's a way to get some of those guys together to create a committee or create a board that can maybe start to do some things on our behalf because of the game they gave to them and what they've given to it. Can they maybe now steer the ship a little bit for us and help guide us a little bit better?
yeah. Well, I wanted to get some of the numbers of Alan Knipe here, but they're mind blowing. 450 and 172 overall record. That's a 72.3% win percentage. USA men's national team head coach from 2009 to 2012 London Olympics. 8 AVCA players of the year. 81 All-Americans. 43 All Big West athletes. 58 All MPSF, because Long Beach State was in the MPSF before the Big West. Then you have 3 AVCA Coach of the Years and 5 Conference Coach of the Years, 4 in the Big West, 1 in the MPSF. That is Alan Knipe. Now, if you visit there, for most people, you say office, like Jay's office, wonderful looking piece of work there. Enjoyed visiting when I was up in Fairfax. But you walk into the Walter Pyramid. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The Long Beach Federal Credit Union Pyramid. Got to
Does
get the
not
right
roll
name.
off the tongue at all.
Yeah. It's not an office. It's a suite of hardware and awards between all of these players, all recognizing the accomplishments, not only of Allen, but Long Beach State before then. But I have to say about 75% of that is all the work that Allen has done. So, I'm sad to see him leave the game, but I just get this sense we're going to be seeing a little bit more of him than normal. So,
I hope so.
and with that, I want to transition. You say big names, big people in the game. We can't avoid one of the biggest names in the game just because he's the best hugger and one of the best personalities in Penn State coach Mark Pavlik. After 32 years, after the season, he's going to be retiring. And Jay used to be sharing the same office suite with Mark, so we'll start with him and go to Joe.
Wow. When the news broke, I got a phone call from him prior to it breaking, and him telling me personally. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you. I was a little, not necessarily emotional and crying, but emotional meaning this is one of the juggernauts in our game. I'll give you a funny story. When I flew out to Pennsylvania for my interview weekend, when he wanted to show me around and see if there was a fit, he picked me up from the airport, and literally one of the first things he said to me was, if you're thinking about trying to stick around and take my job when I retire, you're going to be here for quite a while. And that was 2009 when that happened. So you can imagine it was definitely right. Um, where do you start? I don't want to wax poetic for hours about stuff that people already know. I will just tell you this: over the years, I've had the pleasure of working for some pretty big names in the industry. And from each one of them, I learned something specific about the game, whether it was about how to train or about how to talk to players or how to, put up a schedule, whatever the case is. You learn something from everybody. What I learned from Pav was how to run a program top notch from top to bottom. He was absolutely the pinnacle of dealing with administration, how to navigate the waters with boosters, how to keep alumni committed and engaged, how to just create relationships upon relationships upon relationships that just mattered. When we would go recruiting together at JOs, that's how old I am. I still call it JOs. When you would go recruiting with him at JOs, let's just say you had 50 yards to go to the court that you had to go to. It would take me at that time maybe a minute and a half to walk from here to there. It would take Pav an hour because every 5 steps somebody wanted to talk to him. Everybody had something wanted to say to him, whether it was about his program, about him, or just catching up. And Pav made time for everybody. And you say one of the biggest huggers in the game. He was just a big, lovable human being. Everybody loves Pav. If you have an evil, they say if my dog doesn't like you, chances are I don't like you. If you don't like Pav, chances are I don't like you. And that's, I think, true for a lot of people that know him. He's just one of the best people in the world. I'm not only grateful and honored to have called him an ex-boss of mine, but he's a colleague, but even more so, he's a great friend. And I wish him nothing but the best in his retirement. I know he wants to be, his dream job is to sit behind the goaltender in hockey at the Pagula Ice Arena at Penn State. And he wants to be the guy that hits the horn and, watches the game firsthand from that spot. And I know he's going to be mowing the lawn and spending time in his yard and just kind of enjoying the sunsets with his wife, Heather. And, Jackson, his son, is out and about doing the thing. But I just could not be more proud of him and the work he's done over the years in building that program to where it is, and just him as a friend. So,
Yep. Farewell tour for Pav. So let's go over to Joe.
Yeah, I mean the anecdote about Pav and taking one step and he's mobbed by people. I met Pav at the First Point Collegiate Challenge last year, and I remember trying to get an interview with him, and I would look in his direction, and he's swamped by 3 people. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go interview John Spera, and I'm gonna come back. And then I'd be back with that interview, and he's still talking to 3 different people, and I'm just like, dang, I just want to talk to you, but you're talking to everybody else. But yeah, just I haven't really had a chance like I had with Knipe to truly meet and talk with Coach Pav. But with my location, I'm excited to try and follow a little bit further his season this year. Excited to see what Penn State does, and in his final season, what the Nittany Lions can do this year. So that's it for me.
That's right, Penn State. You can get someone to document Pav's final journey here in 2026. And let's just say JTM could be those initials. I'm just saying. I'll put it out there.
We'll
uh,
make it work.
yeah, funny story, just the way that Pav is. He shared it on a interview I had with him years ago. I think it was his 29th season because I had joked with him like, "What's this? Like your 15th decade of the program, Pav?" And it's like, "Come on, it's 29." So apparently he's getting heckled in the crowd, and Pav does Pav. He actually befriends the heckler and laughs at the sign. He goes, "That's a good one."
Well, I was there for that. Let me tell you the story. I think somebody mentioned it on Volley Talk, but we were at Lewis University. They were doing a game
Lewis.
day, like college game day type scenario for their crowd. We walk into the gym, and one of the signs, because in college game day, everybody has a sign, and one of the signs says, "Pav eats his Subway sandwiches sideways." We busted out laughing. I showed Pav the sign. He starts laughing so hard, he goes over and takes a picture with the guys. He's like, "That's funny." And you know what? It is. And for Pav to be able to laugh at himself and not take it so seriously, yeah, that's just who he is, and love him dearly for it.
Now, it actually rattled a little memory from this last season. I feel like we could involve Theo. Theo eats his hot dogs with ketchup, but that'll be for
Ah,
another episode.
yeah, let's not get involved in that whole thing. By the way, Joe, if you do something with him, there is not a nacho that Pav has met that he has not liked. So I'd be interested to see if you do a nacho tour with him.
Love it.
Nachos with Pav sounds like a new
Yeah,
show.
it's a great show idea, actually.
Well, with that, let's actually go into the even more recent news, the release of the preseason AVCA men's volleyball season. We've got the first poll out, and I wanted to get your thoughts. And I'm not going to talk about all the teams, but what are some things that stick out for you guys? And we'll start with you, Joe, being we'll say the younger of the Jurassic Park crew. Yeah, your current, we're Dino. So let's go.
Yeah, I mean, to top it off, you got UCLA at number one. You've got Long Beach State at three, who won the national championship. You're without Moni Nikolov. So there's a little bit of that. You win the national championship, but you lose your best player. But I don't think that'll have any impact on what Long Beach State does this season. I think really overall, for somebody who takes issue with the AVCA rankings around every time they're released, I was a big fan of this ranking. I think it's as fair as it could go, and a really good baseline for everyone to start off. I think you got teams like LMU who get the respect that they deserve after the season that they had last year. Would love to see them get taken in by a conference, because the talent that they have, you will see at the Division I level this season, will be really exciting, just with the transfers that they had out from last year's team. Otherwise, yeah, I think you have a lot of the same teams that ended around the same spots that they did last year. A lot of new overturn, a lot of new players that are coming in to make an impact on some of those teams that are in between the top 10 and the top 20. So would love to see a lot of those teams shift into the top 10 once the season starts and once the games are starting to be played. But overall, I mean, I really think they did a really good job with this ranking.
Yep. All right, Jay. I know you got some deep thoughts here.
Uh,
Brewing.
I have a few. I think your top 4 or 5 teams have separated themselves early in terms of what people think they could do, and that's UCLA, Long Beach, Hawaii, USC, and I think those teams are the ones that are the ones that everyone's looking at, right? That everybody knows this is going to be a team that's going to be strong. I think teams 5 or 6 through 12 to 15 are all teams that had decent years last year. Let's see where they go, how they start out, how they finish. I think it's kind of hit or miss. I think a couple teams to watch in that group. I think Stanford is posed to make a big move this year. They got some returners that could be key components to them being good. BYU, to me, this every year for this matter, but BYU this year is a little bit of a question mark, because you just never know who's going to go on their mission and who's not going to, and who's coming back from their mission, and how well do they integrate back into their first year of playing. It's just the way they are. It's nature of the beast. But BYU has not been at the top of the heap for a while. I'd like to see what they can do. I'd like to see what Northridge is going to do this year, because I seem to think that Northridge is going to make a little bit of a push. I think San Diego, with the addition of Sani, is going to be a little bit of an injection that they're going to need. I think Loyola could make another move this year that could surprise some people. So those teams in there, I think, are the ones that you probably are looking at going, can they make a move? And then the rest of them, obviously this is Pav's swan song. There's going to be a lot of emotion riding with every match, and his kids are going to play super hard for him because they want him to go out on top. But the rest of the EIBA is not bad, and everybody got good. Princeton may have lost a couple of really top players, but they have a lot of players that were in the wings waiting to get their shot. NJIT looks pretty good this year. Harvard apparently has gotten some new players in the gym, and they only have, I think, 9 players on their roster this year. They're very, very small, but they're apparently pretty darn good, and they're going to be some. And then Charleston. Nobody knows anything about Charleston until you see them. They've got a whole bunch of foreign kids that are pretty good. We're going to be a lot better this year. So it's going to be a dogfight in the EIBA. And good for Lincoln Memorial. I'm with Joe. If they could get into a conference that makes some sense, if they join that GLVC or the ECC, they can be dominant from the get-go and become a team that, like Fort Valley State, they're the team to beat every single year in that conference. So I agree with Joe. I think it's a good mix. I think teams are in the right spots. I don't think there's any massive disses. Losing Moni probably is the biggest deal for Long Beach and why they weren't the unanimous number 1 again. But that being said, they're still Long Beach. They're still pretty good. So,
well, I think it's funny that you're keeping the Patriots a little under wraps here, Jay, because looking at that preseason poll, yeah, Penn State was anonymous, but the thing is, everyone's tight, and looking at the rosters of who's coming back, there isn't going to be a cakewalk day because people are going to battle. Night 1 could be a loss, but night 2 could be a bounce back win. So you can see a bunch of teams going 500 in your conference in
yeah,
conference play.
yeah, yeah. I'd be suffice. I'd be really remiss to say I don't think anyone's going undefeated in any conference this year to get to the final part. So, and that's fun. It's good for volleyball in general. And Joe touched upon it earlier. We can start to take a little bit more risk because no longer are you able to say you have to win everything in order to get in with the 12 teams. Now you have an opportunity to maybe give a couple of younger players an opportunity to play, maybe in a moment where normally you wouldn't do that. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. It's some of the chatter that I've been hearing just from all the preseason tournaments. USC hosts a pretty big tournament, Long Beach State as well in the fall. But the chatter I'm hearing, um, it's going to be crazy competition across the conferences. Between Pepperdine, I don't think if you break down their lineup, they've got a lot of talent returning. And Cole Hartke comes back. It seems like he's like 150% better, which he was already pretty crazy good in his first year. And then you have teams like USC who could easily be the most physical team in the nation with a 6'11 and 7 foot starting middles for them. Oh, and a guy named Dylan Klein. Oh, wait. There's
Who?
another guy there.
Who?
Sterling Foley, and then Caleb Blanchette and former All U19 Libero Dykstra. I'm like, why do they only have one first place vote?
Well, and think about this for a second. Pepperdine historically has been America's team, right? I mean, they've had a couple of foreign players here now, but obviously, they're not completely immune to all that. The
Mhm.
team this year compared to the team next year, they're almost foreign heavy across the board next year. They're going to be a team that people are going to look at and go, where do these kids come from? And it's not cheap to go to that school. So kudos to Winder and his staff. And I know their assistant coach Luke is doing some good recruiting for them on the foreign side. But man, oh man, they're going to be a completely different program than people will recognize from Pepperdine in years past.
Yeah.
If I could hop in on that, I
Yeah,
think the Pepperdine versus USC is going to be one to that race in the MPSF is going to be one to watch. I personally, because they had USC at 5, Pepperdine at 4. I completely agree with that. I think Pepperdine did what they needed to do last year to earn that 4 spot going into this year, earn that respect that, it takes a while to get a team hot. And Winder did a really good job that by the end of that season that they were firing on all cylinders. Cole Hartke was playing some of the best volleyball that he's played in his really young career. So I think both of those teams in the MPSF have a lot to do this year to not only compete with UCLA, who seems to be just the automatic favorite. You got Andrew Rowan, 2-time national champion. He's been to 3 national championships in 3 years at UCLA. He's going into his final season. It's gonna be a dogfight in that top echelon of the MPSF for sure.
USC, UCLA, Pepperdine. Then you got Stanford. and you got BYU. I mean, that conference is stacked, and they are
Mm-hmm.
going to be battling you like crazy. If somebody's not going out of that group, that's crazy.
Well, I'm not going to be a homer, but I got to be a homer on this one because, much to my surprise, I knew Niffin's got great talent in coaching, but it was the Irvine buzz that hurt because they don't have super large names, especially when you have to follow up from Hilaire Heno and Max Grigorev. But they got a lot of good respect in these fall tournaments. They took down some of the bigger teams, from what I understand. Although the results aren't official, they were a team that really amazed, I believe. And Big West is going to be a throwdown. I want to also add that, looking at the rest of the MIVA rosters, it's going to be talent deep on all the teams. Because, Ohio State, McKinney, we got Flater, who's been really grabbing a lot of attention. Wetzel at Ohio State. I know I'm leaving people out, but it's because there's so many. We haven't even mentioned any of Dan's guys at Lewis, or even particularly named any of the guys at Loyola. It's going to be insanity in each of the conferences.
Yeah, yeah.
Every
So with that, I
conference
want
this
to
year
go ahead.
is there's not. I don't think. I mean, besides maybe one or two teams, I don't think there are going to be a single weak team. I think every conference this season is going to be an absolute dogfight. I'm really, really excited to see the MIVA play. I mean, I may be biased because I did all their interviews, but I am confident in every single one of those teams that I interviewed. I mean, Purdue, Fort Wayne, Lindenwood, I think are going to make some noise this year. Just they're continuing to trend in the right direction and have some talent that really want to show what they're up to. But yeah, just so excited. Especially you mentioned Flater. All of the players that competed for the USA national team, whether that be U21, U23. I think all of those players going into this season, I'm really, really excited to see what they do. Flater, Kelly, Rama, or excuse me, Harkey. All of those players are really exciting to get going this year.
Well, I know that we're going to be seeing the AVCA preseason All-American teams, but I want to do something different because for me, a list like that's going to be difficult to choose. I like to just say, who's on your watch list? And Jay, I already sent you a thing, but if you want to change yours up, if you can name 1 to 3, I'm curious who's on your guys' watch list for 2026. And we'll start with you, Jay.
I got to think Trent Rosenthal in Hawaii is going to be a player to watch. He's not only 6'9", but was working with the national teams over the summers, and kid's really good. He's a good leader too. I think that's first and foremost. I mean, listen, I know Sean Kelly, everybody talks about UCLA, but I tend to think that Rowan's still the guy to watch. He's a great setter, a little flowy, right? He's not, mechanical like a lot of setters are. He's tall. He gets in people's faces in the airspace when he's blocking. I think Rama is going to have a big year this year too for them. They're going to be pretty good. Obviously, Dylan Klein is a kid that, the last few years has had some pretty nice results and some pretty good numbers. He's still not done. And he's going to light some people up. Those are probably the ones on the West Coast. In the Midwest, Franciscovic at Loyola obviously is a kid that had some good stuff in the last couple of years. Flater is a name that gets tossed around a lot. I think they're going to be good. I'm interested to see what happens at Penn State. I know obviously everybody knows about Merck as a libero, is one of the best in the country. Owen Rose is a really good middle. And we'll see what happens in their setter situation. I know Schwob and the transfer from Grand Canyon. They got Chris from NorCal, the young man who was with the U19 team this summer or whatever it was. But it's just a matter of which team gets hot at the right moment. And Joe touched upon early, teams are stacked this year. There's no real clear winners of who's going to be at the top of each conference. And I think as the year goes on, like most years, teams are going to get hot, teams are going to get cold, teams are going to have some injuries, teams are going to get healthy. It's, can you put it all together at the right moments when it matters the most?
Yep. All right, Joe. Jay went to like 20, so I'm okay if you go to 20.
I'll go each part of the country. I'll see what names I can rattle off. Since you took Tread, I'm gonna take his middle blocker. I'm gonna go Travell Jordan. I think a Grand Canyon transfer, had an absolute amazing summer with U21. I think he's just an absolute beast, and the size that Hawaii has in the middle with Travell Jordan and Justin Todd, it's going to be one of the scariest middle blocker rooms in the country, especially with Hosack and Roman Payne backing him up. That's going to be a team in Hawaii that, if they can stay healthy, they've got one of the toughest schedules in the country, knowing that they're from Hawaii and they have to travel to so many different teams and have so many top. I think they've got like 7 or 8 of the top 10 teams that they're playing this season. So that's one thing. And then you got Sebastian Asani at UC San Diego, finally being able to be put into a role where he can thrive. You know, we saw him come in for Long Beach State last season, you know, as a freshman. So going into his second season playing for UC San Diego is going to be a big piece. And then, yeah, I think Nathan Slater as a setter. You got McKendry. You can never count out McKendry. To see them put at 15 after the season that they had last year I think, is just a complete disrespect to what Nikki Sandlin is doing over there. And, you know, we talked about it on our interview. Is just, you can never count out the Bearcats. And, you know, you would think after year of them consistently being one of the best teams, you know, in the regular season in that MIVA conference, that they would get a little bit more respect, being put over, you know, a Penn State that while they won the IVA, you know, had a little bit of a struggle throughout the regular season. But in terms of the talent in the MIVA, I'm really, really looking forward to see what Brendan Luthane does at Lindenwood. I'm really looking forward to see overall Ohio State, the talent that they have. I think they aren't talked about enough in the MIVA, what they're going to do, what Birch has going on with Wetzel, with Iliad Torres, who came in from LMU, led the country in hitting percentage last season, and you know, I'm sure I could name plenty of other players that I'm looking forward to, but those are just a few.
Well, it gives our listeners and viewers a chance to take a peek at those rosters. So I'm going to throw mine down. It's kind of middle heavy, and I want to check Micah Goss of UC Irvine, but Cameron Thorne as well from UCLA. I already mentioned Cole Hartke, but this is the one that's going to be a tough one. Any Hawaii opposite hitter, because you do realize Christian Tetrisky is back. Finn Kearney can crack the ball. Kainoa Wade had a phenomenal summer for USA. Who are you going to put in? And who's going to ride? Oh, wait, you have a guy named Adrian Rohr also that could play around. And oh, wait, Luis Sakanoko? Wait a second here. I think any Hawaii pin attackers are going to be watching because they can all deliver. So, I mean, it's going to be an exciting time to see some of the talent that's going to be out there. And you throw on the fact that we're beginning to see close to 87 mile per hour spin serves now. Nope, Moni's 84 is old news. So, and that's just
Who's serving 87 that you're seeing?
He's on the Polish national team, but I've seen some other 19-year-olds hitting that. So that's Leon. That's hitting that.
Speaking of Polish national teams, Wojciech Gajek from Long Beach State. There's another name that you know, freshman opposite for Long Beach State, coming off the Poland national team. Going to be a really, really good player this year.
Yep. Oh, without a doubt. And I know that's, we'll just say certain coaching staff were really high on that particular outside at Long Beach State. So with that, I wanted to jump into, I know I didn't put this when I sent out the questions, predictions for 2026. Could be on anything, any team, any player, any result. A prediction that you guys have. Just have fun to bring in the new year.
I'll go Ohio State wins the MIVA.
Ooh.
I think I'll go that.
That's actually a pretty big prediction.
Mm-hmm.
Prediction. After this year, you're going to see more shifting of teams dropping out of conferences and joining other conferences.
You want to know how big a risk I'm going to take? I think 3 of the at-larges are either going to go to Big West or MPSF.
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting to see how they do it. And, you know, we haven't even touched upon that at all. And that's a huge topic of conversation. Everybody wants to know, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? We don't even know.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was one of the things that I wanted to follow up on is we aren't sure of the format. We just know that certain sites are going to bid to host that first round. But what's the format? Are you going to send a team from the West Coast to the East Coast and vice versa? I mean, no one knows. And we're officially what 4 months out to the conference tournaments starting January 1.
Yeah.
So
You'd think we know as coaches what we're going to be doing. We have no clue.
there's this thing called the internet that you can put this information on for the public to consume.
Oh, that's crazy. Inner
But
tubes.
well, with that, we are almost an hour and a half into our episode, and there's only three of us on it. Can you imagine if we had the full panel on?
Oof, oof. Yeah, if I had to listen to Dan wax poetic about his days back as a coach, the early 2000 aughts. I mean, I love you, Dan. I'm giving it crap.
Well, with that, that concludes episode 289 of College Volleyball Weekly Men's Top 10, 20. Got Joe McCurdy of JMTV Ball, and it's not because of
JTM.
JTM. I'm a little dyslexic today. And Jay Hosack of George Mason University, former Eater, former Pirate, former what was your
I was never a pirate.
I'm not a pirate. Irvine Valley Laser, a laser,
I was a laser. I was also a lancer when I
and a
was
banana slug.
and a banana slug and a Nittany Lion. Yeah, I've been a lot of places.
So with that, be sure to follow Joe and Jay's program because Jay is not on Instagram, but he is out there, and you can always get the administration's attention through the Mason V-Ball site. So appreciate your time today, boys. I'm wishing you guys, as well as all of our listeners, a very prosperous, exciting, and thrill-filled 2026 as the men's volleyball season is knocking on the door. Gentlemen, enjoy the rest of your days.
See ya.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, just a reminder, the first couple matches of the 2026 season go hot. January 2nd, January 4th, NJIT versus Hawaii in the Islands. Also, be sure to check out the Big West men's volleyball preview on December 30th, 12 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Hawaiian. That'll be on ESPN Plus, and be sure to check out the MPSF Men's Volleyball Media Day. That's available for free on Big Ten Plus, streaming through their platforms. So again, that's the Big West Men's Volleyball Preview on ESPN Plus, releasing December 30th, 12 p.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Hawaii, and the MPSF Men's Volleyball Media Day available on Big Ten Plus in their archive.